Welcome, guys, to the Underdogs Podcast, the most scuffed but the only English broadcast about this side of BCS. So let's just jump right into it. I'm here today alone without Mongoose. He was unfortunately unable to record this episode with me, but today we are going to talk about what has happened in the first half of the regular season and the second half of the new format. So we are going to get into it right now. Right now we are going to get split into two groups. The first half of the table will participate in the Contender group to fight over the slots in the second round of playoffs. Playoffs also will have a different format, but we will get there when we will talk about the playoffs episode. What you need to know now is that first two teams get buys to the round 2, and the first team actually gets to the round 2 to the second match, gets a buy in the second round as well. So second place is getting to the second round of playoffs, and first place is getting a buy in the second part of playoffs. The remaining places will participate in the first part of the playoffs anyway, so all of these 4 teams are set to play in playoffs. And then in these teams we will have CTBC Flying Oyster, we will have FAK, we will have BYG, and we will have PSG Talon, who surprisingly are in the 4th place. But let's jump into the second group, which is the Breakout Group. This group is fighting for the last slots to the stage 1 of playoffs. There will be Deep Cross Gaming, J-Team, Helpix, and Westpoint Esports fighting for the last 2 slots. As you can see right now, given that the results carry over to the group stage, DCG and J-Team are heavy favorites to advance into the further stage, with Helpix and theoretically, mathematically, Westpoint Esports still have the chances to advance, as Westpoint can still win the 3 matches against Deep Cross Gaming, J-Team, and Helpix to possibly get a tiebreaker or a game difference to actually go over these top two teams to advance. But yeah, that's the situation that will be going on in the group stages. There will be 3 matches going over 2 days for each of the group. So. And as far as I saw, each day will have matches from a different group. So this will be certainly interesting, as we will see more even matches in the second half of this second round robin. So let's jump into the results that each of the teams had. Going into the first place, we have CTBC Flying Oyster. And when it comes to CTBC, well, their results did surprise many initially, but now after all of the weeks came by, it is kind of as expected. They are on the first place, having the 6-1 and 1 game difference over Frank Esports, and despite tempering some of the hype with the initial loss to BYG, they managed to claw it back against PSG and Frank Esports in the last week of this first round robin, surprising me heavily and many other people, as they did slam the ground with PSG in that first game of week 4. And overall, Gory and Sword Art are looking like the best mid support in the league. Karsa is also like in this top echelon of junglers, but I will get him under some of these players. But most importantly, CFO has a really strong core that is in general performing. You can kind of be critical over Rest's play recently, but he is getting 0 resources and he's being constantly pushed on the weak side, which in my opinion isn't the best play style of Rest. So kind of that's it. You just have to be happy that Shun is doing really well on the weak side. Sword Art is basically the best support out there so far. Gory is performing really well with the pentakill versus Frank Esports in game 1, really sealing the deal for me in terms of evaluating his strength, which is, well, the best, but not as dominant as he was in the first time when he played in PCS in PSG Talon. Still, it is way more than enough for CFO, as they are looking like kind of the favorites. They can just keep going. It seems as they have sped up, and now, who knows, maybe they will actually get the championship back from PSG once again, as they are counting Machin as well, the only and the second team apart from PSG. The only team apart from PSG and the second one overall to actually win PCS. So here is hoping that they can manage to follow up on this. Second team that is going to participate in the Contender group. Second place, one game behind the CFO with a 6-1 match record is Frank Esports. And they were doing phenomenally. They were pretty much on the top of the league with the double mid laners in Pretender and Jimin, and the very unexpected talent in Yijiang, which disrupted heavily pretty much everyone's power rankings, as no one expected the top lane prospect to really pop off this much, especially as in TES in PCL he wasn't really that kind of a hard carry, and it's actually amazing how much did his performance change after the few weeks, few months under the guidance of Kaiwing and Co. As he is the undisputed best player in the 1v1s, only losing one match to, I think, Driver, and having the most solo kills in the league with very memorable plays. Then the free solo kills versus J-Team, where he got the two solo kills against Driver, and Driver got the one solo kill against him. It was a banger match to watch. It was a banger matchup in the top lane, and the memory of this player's Aatrox will be definitely imprinted in my mind, and so far he has been a huge impression on me, even greater than Solo Kill, who, well, comparing to at least my bubble to the people with who I am talking with, I was one of the people who actually kind of underrated Solo Kill. I think he wasn't a top laner for most of the time in Frank, and I would say that Yijiang definitely, compared to him, is projecting much more talent in terms of the carry champions. In terms of weak side, however, not so much. He can stand his own when Jimin is playing when Jimin is a member who demands a lot of resources, but when it comes to playing that tank play style, when it comes to going on the K'Sante, he hasn't really looked good on the K'Sante, and I think there is a reason why he hasn't been playing on the tags more often, why he is picking Aatrox so much times, and it is kind of surprising how he is uncontested in most parts in the games. But yeah, I guess. So yeah, Yijiang definitely a big surprise. I'm surprised how big of a difference Gemini also poses when he's playing with Pretender versus Jimin, and it is really impressive how they are able to mix and match between those two mid laners and adapt their playstyles where they allocate their resources by the most part when they play with Pretender or with Jimin. Pretender, a really selfless mid laner, giving the priority to some of the other players, getting the blind pick Karmas, previously the Jace, previously the Nikos and the Annies. He is really just a low resource player, and in my opinion, he's the best resource mid laner or maybe even player overall in the PCS, and I really adore that player. I am his fanboy, I have told this many times. I love this guy. Jimmy, on the other hand, has proven this far that his form from playoffs is not gone yet. He can carry games against the best mid laners of the league, and he has proven this multiple times. He also lost some games on some certain champions, but, well, that's what happens when you get a player that can be targeted in draft in this meta, so this is the risk that you put yourself in when you are playing Jimian. But I think that in general, the Frank strategy of just subbing in Jimian when they lose with Pretender and subbing him in on game 2, I think it is a really nice thing that they are doing, because it makes them even more unpredictable in a team that is very ridden with narrow champion pools. You can see, for example, like, you know that Kywing doesn't really like playing enchanters. Eminem doesn't really play the non-standard AD carries, apart from, you can say that Caitlyn is a not standard and AD carry in terms of meta as of right now, and it is his good champion, but apart from that, he did play some Kalista, but he doesn't play like Samira, he doesn't play the Senna, which is a very big pick in this meta. He doesn't really pick Varus that often, which is a very big pick, and overall, when it comes to Frank Esports, they are really easy to just kind of target pick, especially when they have Jimian on their side. But mechanically, they are still able to overpower their opponents despite that, so like really just kudos to them, because if CFO didn't defeat them, then they would have been a very clear favorite to at least win this group, if not win it all. Going over to the next team, it is kind of unexpected that we are going to Beyond Gaming as of now. And, well, BYG definitely hit the ground running with the very surprising win against CFO, but then they kind of started stumbling, they kind of started losing some games. Husha didn't really played well, was incredible during week 1, but as the time went, he kind of came back to the level of performance that we know him from, which is still good, but it isn't enough to really make the difference against the likes of Chunjia, against the likes of Karsa. I think that Karsa would jungle with Husha in... I think he will just diff Husha in the group stage, so... Well, they did end with a 5-2 score. Welcome to the Most Scuffed Podcast. And overall, they have lost some games that they shouldn't have really dropped them. The game against Halpix being a prime example of that. Start of game against DCG, but we will get to them later. And when it comes to them, it's a little bit surprising how they do play, considering what their players are. Driver, which has been pretty much the best top laner overall, maybe he has been a little bit overshadowed by Ejang so far, but overall, when it comes to the overall level of play, I think Driver is still better because of his weak side performance, but he hasn't really been played around in BYG, and he isn't able to showcase his ceiling on some of those champions. You've seen him get those highlight plays on Cassandra, you've even seen the solo kills in the matchup against Ejang himself, but he isn't really able to flourish in this roster. Who is able to flourish is 1116 though. He is getting the resources. Driver and Fang are playing the weak side for him, and he has been delivering, especially against some of these weaker teams, which is kind of surprising to me, because I knew him previously, like up to pretty much summer. It is last summer where he stopped being this inconsistent mess with which whose gameplay kind of bordered on win trading, not gonna lie. Like, this is a very trendy thing to say, but he was getting some really suspicious plays at times on his best champions out in that. And he seems, as of now, to really accustom himself to the Hui, for example. He has been performing really well as the main carry for Beyond Gaming, and honestly, he may be the second best mid laner over Jimin, but under Gory. This maybe kind of be a contested idea even for me, but I think that he definitely had a surprisingly stable performance so far, and I can't wait to actually see this potential flourish and maybe go to Worlds. Maybe. I'd rather not see BYG though. And the answer to this is that I think at stay true, like, definitely not the best laning bot lane that is out there, and Feng is, well, he can play carry against those very weak teams, but against those better teams, he hasn't really shown to be the shit. He hasn't really shown to be that kind of guy who can even be the real secondary carry like the Pretender can be, for example, and overall, kind of disappointed me. I've been a his fan, well, on his first split, but I don't think that he, like, radically underperformed in my eyes. I think that it is just his level of play so far. But I think that this is a player that once he breaks through that one level, he can go for a very similar journey to the likes of Jimin. So, overall, that was BYG, as we are going to go into PSG Talon, and oh, PSG Talon, the disgrace PSG Talon, who went 4-3 and lost against DCG. They are underperforming so far, and this is due to multiple factors, in my opinion. It is due to meta changes with the nerfs of Maokai, especially the nerfs of Maokai that will end up in the next patch. I think they won't get to the group stage, but they will be definitely hitting hard to this jungler in the playoff stage. Other than that, when it comes to the meta changes, Renekton is no longer viable, and this is one of the champions that Agi loves to play. Nara is still viable, that is very good for him. Xante is still viable, that is very good for him. He did also spam Udyr initially, which he was also playing really well at. Then Udyr kind of fell off in the meta as people realized that they didn't put enough games to really abuse this pick, and so they thought that he's not really good in teamfights. Well, he kind of is, but people are not abusing him in lane as far as they could be. So, well, yeah. Ajay is still himself, he's still that weak sider for PSG, and when it comes to blaming anyone, he shouldn't be the first person to blame, honestly. The first person to blame, in my opinion, has been Maple so far. And it was seen especially in the latter half of this round robin. In the games against CFO and the games against DCG, he did try to pick off some of these newer playstyles, such as ADTF, such as the Hui, and despite this being respectable, he has been making some of these mechanical mistakes that are really unexpected from a player of that caliber, and this has costed them significant advantages that had snowballed into further leads, which can be especially seen against DCG, and I think the first game where he misses his ult and he isn't able to zone the rest of the members of DCG from chasing him down, and from that play onwards, the situation kind of goes downhill. It may be a little bit too harsh to like completely say it was Maple's fault that the game snowballed against him, but this is just a prime example that I have off the top of my head, that he has been making those very unexpected mistakes, and those are the mistakes that the player of this caliber shouldn't be doing. Apart from that, well, PSG did have the failed meta read with the Nocturne Orianna, which didn't fare well for them in the game versus Frank Esports especially. They did manage to stop using it later on as the next patch went in week 3, and they did manage to stomp BYG 2-0, but overall, so far, losing 3 games, one against a lower group member, definitely disappointing from this roster, and I would say that it is mainly due to underperformance from Maple and Junjia. Betty also doesn't have his Kaisa, which has been his the champion that helped him reach his ceiling. But yeah, that's overall my opinion. I don't hold anything against Woody. I think he has been performing as he did previously, which not the best support in the league, but it's definitely not his fault that PSG has slumped down from being that title winner to the 4th place after the first round robin. Going into the next group, we are going to talk about Deep Cross Gaming, and this has been a hella inconsistent team. From the wins against PSG to the losses against J-Team with Soulcool to being really competitive against PYG, this team can win and lose versus everyone, and this is mainly due to the volatility of Kriskata and 665. The Tilt King, you know him, you may love him, you may hate him. 665 is a player that has a really high ceiling and a really low floor that just shows. There's nothing more to really talk about him. He's that cocky carry player that really knows how to handle his champions and seems really lost when a game is not going his way, especially when he keeps going further behind. So overall, 65, same as always. Kriskata though, a very big surprise, as the roll swap from the carry to mid lane has been a lifesaver for him, it seems, as he has shown some very spectacular games also in both sides. Like, he's excellent on the Huawei, he's excellent on some of the other champions. He had 13 unique champions over 17 games, and while some of the Akali and Yone games, especially the Yone game, may have not been as good, all of these performances can be described by him being really confident in his play, and this is a very, very good characteristic to have as a player. I see a lot of untapped potential that can be utilized by other teams in the next splits, should they actually grab Kriskata for the roster, and he has been the driving force between most of DCG's wins. It was not Taco who, especially in the first half of the split, has been showing some really, really unfortunate underperformances when he was making some of these game-losing plays, for example versus, I think, Beyond Gaming, where he had this really, really bad game where he solo lost the game. He did stabilize in the latter weeks though, and he is still Taco. He is still a somewhat consistent top laner who just can do his job and can hold his own against most. But he definitely didn't improve. Tide and Orca as well. They are the Lucian, Milio, Lucian, Nami bot lane, and apart from that, they haven't been really showing many of those pop-off moments, but they definitely keep up with the level of the league, and I wouldn't rank them lower than, for example, the stage 2 Fang bot lane. So, yeah, I don't think they are particularly weak, especially in a world when bot lanes aren't really that both impactful and stacked in terms of player names this split, especially after Wacko left J-Team. Talking about J-Team, we will go over them in a minute, but I would just like to say that, yeah, overall, DCG has been the most entertaining organization to watch this split, and I really can't wait to watch more of their games. So, as I said, let's jump straight into the 6th place team in J-Team, behind Deep Cross Gaming in 2 games, 44 in matches, wins against Helpix, DCG and Westpoint, which should bode well because those are their opponents in the group stage. But the drama, the old roster, the new roster, this team has been ridden with some very unfortunate events so far this split, and the current iteration is a team which doesn't really have that much of that synergy going on between them. This is a freshly made roster, basically mid-split, as the dramas between Hanabi, Menji, Kongyue, and so on and so on and so on went on. Multiple players and even the manager leaving the team. Only Menji remaining, and now we have Lauva back. So Likai, Lauva, Menji, Chichi, and Yursan is the roster. And it is really unfortunate to see this team crumbling, because this was a team which I personally had many hopes for in this split, and the fact that they collapsed so early, just a shame. Overall though, when it comes to the current situation, I would say that Minji is underperforming. I think that the overall drama has really impacted him, and he has regressed towards his Berjaya Dragons and the initial regular split BYG Menshi that was really only performing on his characters, and even now these characters aren't really that good, and his team isn't really good at playing around them, and overall he has been performing like the worst mid laner in terms of laning, for example. He is just bad right now. Compared to the other mid laners, he is just bad. His latter half of mid laners, he is just not it for J-Team. And the player that is it for J-Team, most surprisingly, is Likai. So, yeah, Likai, ever since he got to play with Kongyue, he hasn't been able to get those carry performances, and it's a shame that Kongyue left J-Team after the leaked argument scandal that went on, because I think that Likai and Kongyue should be the duo that they should play together in one team, because they just click together, and Kongyue was really able to enable Likai to reach his full potential, which hasn't been really seen apart from that. Lava is kind of managing to emulate Kongyue in that, but I would like to see how this team performs further to really have a firm belief in that statement. Apart from that, well, Chichi is kind of alright. Like, when it comes to Chichi and Chichi especially, way too little sample size to really run him properly. Yursan, despite my expectations of him, has been relatively okay. He definitely isn't the worst support in the PCS, at least decisively the worst, which is kind of a surprise given his competition. I really do not rank the supports in PCS highly, and well, overall he wasn't standing out negatively for me. Lava keeps being Lava, the most improved player of last split. He is a player with low ceiling but high floor. And overall, I think that in this current roster, J-Team should still be able to overpower at least Helpix and Westpoint, if not DCG. The matchup versus DCG will definitely be interesting, and as far as I remember, will be one of the first ones that we will watch as the group stage will go forth. And the matchup between the 2, 3, and 4 teams, 3 wins, 4 losses, will be the most important one, as the one who wins is pretty much at least guaranteed to not have a tiebreaker against Westpoint, if not outright advancing, depending on how the results go. So in terms of the teams that will struggle to advance towards playoffs, let's go for Helpix. They won versus Westpoint, they did get a 1 win versus PYG, and so far they have been competitive. And this is really important for Helpix to really not be a laughingstock, because in my opinion they haven't been really delivering in the meme department so far. They are the meme stream dream team, but GotJJ and Ko are just not it for me so far, at least in the in-game content. The reaction cams and the pre-match stuff, they just haven't been delivering so far. And for them to be competitive versus most of these teams, it really means a lot, because this is the difference between me treating them like they are right now as the 7th place contender, and treating them as Liap, for example, as a Jewish team, like a team that is basically a running joke because they are so bad. And this was my expectation, honestly, for them. They were the meme team for me. They were absolutely awful in Champions Queue for the most part, and it has been even showing in some of the PTT posts that I was watching back then. And so, yeah, really impressive. Kudos to Benny for coaching this team, for really managing to make them better and better over time. And overall, each member of this team has had a moment when he shined and had a moment where he faltered. GotJJ in the initial weeks with the tower dives, with the initial matches where he was playing Varus and he was getting fed and he was kind of doing well. Shanghai on certain champions such as the Hui, sorry for that, he can be really good with those artillery mages, but I would say that he has both impressed me positively and negatively at the same time. He can acquire leads, but I don't think he is a player that can really carry a game, which, well, one thing is very good for a player, and second one is basically big no. So, when it comes to that, yeah, Kazma is alright. He hasn't really stood out. He definitely didn't stood out. He can be a good... He is not a liability for this team, definitely, but he hasn't been really good at getting those early game advantages for his team, and maybe this isn't his fault. Maybe it is just the fault that the solo lanes are crumbling against him. But as of now, with me not being really an expert on pathing, I can really just say that Kazma is just okay. The player that has actually stood out for me is Arding. And I think that he is the only player in this roster that is actually legit, and he's the only player that I hope remains later after the split. Like, GotJJ can remain as the streamer figure. Shanghai, I think he is also a streamer, so he can remain as well. But I would like to see Kazma being out of this team. I would like to see ICU being out of this team. ICU had his 2 moments. He looked good on Impunity. He looked lackluster on the another team he was in. And now he isn't really delivering. He had his Gwen game, we know him for his Gwen, we know him for his Aurelia. But apart from that, he's just really easy to just get overpowered on when he plays other champions, and yeah, I don't think Help picks have much of a chance to really go forth to playoffs, but they still have it in their hands. If they win the 3 matches, then they are pretty much guaranteed to at least have a tiebreaker, I think. I don't know how tiebreaker rules work, whether they need to be even matches, whether the game difference is actually matters in here. But in theory, they can still make it. Who cannot make it on their own, though, will be West Point Esports, as they are 0-7 and they need a miracle for them to happen. They need other team to go 0-3 to even have a chance for participating in playoffs, and this is due to them really just not being it. This should be 0-2 versus CFO, sorry for that, but overall, Relia is not delivering, Noli is not delivering, 665 is no longer there, though Rennie is kind of okay. He isn't at that 665's level, and overall he is probably... I think he is above Kazma, but the difference isn't really that high, and these two players are definitely the worst junglers in the league. Cha is doing as he's doing alright. Cheng9 is indisputably the worst AD carry. Like, don't be fooled by the Varus performances. Varus is a really good champion in this patch, and he has been pretty much... he had those highlight moments mainly due to other players just misplaying rather than anything. So, yeah, I think Cheng9 is probably the worst player in this league, and this is very unfortunate because Prage was kind of better, and it's a shame that they couldn't keep him for the rest of the split, or even get a better AD carry from the other academies. Well, not just kind of the budget of the Southeast Asian teams. Maybe some kind of other talent will show up to them in the next split, but so far their situation is looking dire. Relia is just simply not it with the carries. Like, the environment overall for him, like, Rennie isn't able to accumulate that much game kills for him. He himself isn't able to get the solo kills onto other players. Noli just does not have his Jace anymore, and thus he is garbage, pretty much. Like, not garbage, but he is just not it, definitely, and I think he's not a PCS level player, considering that players are like Mission are on the bench. Like, oh my god, just I hope Mission just lets himself go on lower salary and join a team like Westmead, because he is just such an easy pick to get if he actually would accept a salary cut. Otherwise, Rennie, as I said, he's okay. Yeah, I think I pretty much said it all. This is a very unfortunate set of circumstances for West Point Esports, but that's the reality, unfortunately, and I doubt that they get it win the split. Simple as. They were close versus Hellpix. Maybe they snatch a win versus Hellpix later on, but so far they haven't impressed me in any sort of way, and I don't see this team reliably winning games, and especially reliably winning 2 games against any team. Like, sorry to every Southeast Asian fan, that's just my opinion, and I'm someone who really wants to cheer for Southeast Asian teams. So that is it for West Point Esports, and that's it for this episode. So thank you all for watching. This has been a very quick episode of the Underdogs Podcast, the most scuffed but the only English podcast about this side of PCS. I've been Meander. Mongoose unfortunately was not with me this time. He will be hopefully on the next episode to share his opinions on the full regular split. And I will see you on the next one. See ya.